I got arrested so much just because I fit a description.
Yeah.
You know, I once spent the whole weekend in the jail cell because somebody somewhere, still don't know who, vandalized something. And I was sitting in the tram on my way to town to have some drinks with friends. And police stopped the tram, came into the tram, arrested me because I fit a description of a person in a black coat. I stood up, and I'm honest with you, I stood up and I just did this like, I didn't even try anymore because I know if I would try to resist arrest or something, they would beat me up. And the only thing I said to them was like, with all due respect, Mr. Police Officer, but there's like 7 people with a black jacket in here. Yeah, but you fit the description. Okay, whatever. I said what I needed to say, got to jail, stayed there for 2 nights, and I got released on Sunday again. That's how it works. And then you get an apology. Yeah, sorry. You get beaten up, get shot, just because you want to stand up for yourself. Yeah. And that's something I'm completely against, and that's why I stand behind BLM. The only thing we don't need to forget is BLM stands for way more than just Black lives.
Yeah.
There's way more people that suffer from discrimination, racism, and those kinds of things.
Yeah. Aggressively.
It exploded very aggressively.
But obviously what happened to George Floyd was like a big turning point towards people like educating themselves, posting about it, all the marches and stuff like that.
The social media played a huge role in the bringing that to public light a lot, and I think you'd ask almost anyone in a number of countries and would all know exactly what it's all about.
The fact that it took over social media and like people's like lives really for such a long period of time, I think it was quite refreshing to see, because I think a lot of people have been have ignored some of these issues in the past, or thought they weren't as bad as they were blading on to be, or I think the whole Black Lives Matter movement really opened up a lot of people's eyes to just how a lot of people are being treated in the world today, and some of the misjustice of actions being taken all over the world, not just America.
For a bit at first, I was extremely overwhelmed. Like, I couldn't go on social media without nearly having a breakdown. But then I was like, well, I'm here in my little white privilege bubble, and I'm feeling anxious over this, and people are actually out there dying in the streets.
When the movement was at its particular high on social media, that was a wild time that I actually don't think I'll ever forget, like the feelings of that. I don't think a lot of people will. Like, I remember just waking up every day and thinking about it all day. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that might sound dramatic, but when you're when you're on social media as much as like folk like we probably are these days, it's like you can't not see it. And like that as much as I don't like applying pressure to people, there was a lot of people doing that, and I think in that instance it did work to reach a lot of people about what the fuck is actually going on.
If there was not social media, George Floyd would just have been another victim of the police and nothing would have changed. Socials can be ruthless at times, but they still remain a powerful tool.
You do feel a lot of pressure, even if you're not in the band, but just like a civilian, to participate and spread the word, because you know that you're gonna get messages like, hey, where's the donation link, sis? Or like, why aren't you sharing it as well? And you're gonna feel a lot of shame. And that's what I like about social media.
The one thing I didn't agree is that the whole social media growth suddenly turned into actually bullying people into speaking out and into posting things and support. Well, obviously you want to support, but I think what a lot of people were forgetting is that actually you can support without having to put it out on social media. And if everyone just changes the way they're speaking to one another, I think you would already see a huge change. But what you actually saw happening was people bullying people on social media, saying that if you're not posting anything, that you're part of the issue. And I think that was completely wrong. And that's what upset me on this whole journey of like the Black Lives movement at the moment.
At first, I was hesitant as I didn't want to post just because I had to, because otherwise it would look bad. or because it was trendy. So it took me a while to do it, and I had to think a lot before saying the right things.
People that are not behind it just jump on it as a way to increase their followers or get attention. People that were posting themselves at protests and stuff just to be at the protest. I don't think that's what we want to do.
The one in Munich was amazingly organized by people that I also know, and they just did an incredibly fucking amazing job. Shout out to Wokish on Instagram. Jennifer, she did a lot of organizing. Her speech was beautiful. But it's funny how some people went there, like I took a couple of videos of the speeches and posted them on my Instagram. Some people just kind of went there and held signs and took Instagram pictures and then just posted edited pictures, which is what I also saw from some bands. Like, this is not a moment to get an Insta picture. This is a moment to spread the message. One of the people that we know posted an incredibly beautiful edited picture and a very questionable video. So that kind of made me pull back from the band.
You get people who are just posting out of, I want to go with the trend, or I want to get this off my back, and don't even like mean it genuinely. And I think what's way more important than posting things online is actually educating yourself, going online, reading things. Where did they come from? Where did this movement come from? What are people going through on their daily lives? And you don't get that when you put pressure on a social media platform where you're only reposting, where you see like, oh, I like how this picture looks and it has hashtag BLM under it. I post it. So then people see I'm one of the good ones. And I think that's wrong.
Yeah, you saw a lot of people just posting, like the black square. And then in the comments, people would be like, can you actually give some information on how to help, places to donate, stuff like that.
I was in two minds about that happening as well, because you've seen all the people being like, oh, who was the genius that came up with this, because it's just blacked out social media for 24 hours. But do you know what's weird about it? On the other hand as well, there was something weirdly powerful about waking up and going on social media and seeing nothing but black squares for 24 hours. There was something quite mad about that as well. And at the end of the day, it probably also... Think about the amount of people that weren't paying attention to Black Lives Matter, right? And then they went on their social media and that's all they saw. I bet that would have then suddenly made them pay attention.
What I've been saying from the beginning is actually by making it trending, by having things like the Blackout Tuesday, which also was really controversial, I think you got people to talk about it. You constantly were confronted with it. And whether you're someone who just uses it as a trend, or you're someone that actually never heard about this, you're getting it out into the world, and you're getting it in all kinds of societies, in age groups, in gender groups. You're spreading the message in a way that it reaches so many people, rather than just mouth to mouth. And
I think it's definitely important for a public figure, and especially someone that people look up to support this movement.
Of course, once you get certain influencers onto that, like for instance celebrities or whatever, then obviously gives it a huge kick wave for lots of people to do it, and that's a very successful campaign regardless of what it is.
Yeah, I think when you've got like a big platform, you should always try to take advantage, spreading information which you believe in too, and you would hope that the bands you listen to would be supporting of the Black Lives Matter movement and therefore would be promoting ways to help it.
I think as an artist, what's the most important thing, because the whole discriminating, what we're doing is finding differences between each other. Yeah. And I think a creative person who has a fan base, they Definitely. All look up to him because they can all share something. They all have one thing in common at least, and it's that creative.
It's such an important thing because there's so many people who idolize musicians or celebrities or anything like that. So if you do have a platform, you need to use it not just for posting your selfies and promoting whatever is going on in your life, but it does help especially a younger generation of people who might not watch the news, who might not read articles on all the news websites. They get their information from social media, and if someone from band A is tweeting about an issue like that, I think they'll pay more attention to it.
That gets heard more than just your average me on Twitter, with my 200 followers. And I think it's really important that we also, as a group, as a community, sort of motivate our people, our idols, to kind of speak up about these issues, because there's this whole silence is taking the side of the oppressor.
Honestly, if you can't step up and say shut the fuck up, not all lives matter until Black Lives Matter, then I'm not going to respect you as a person, and I'm not going to listen to your band anymore. You have to at some point decide if you want to stand up for what's right, or if you want to keep all of your fans. And I think that if you choose to keep all your fans and not offend anyone, you're an absolute piece of shit, you're privileged, and you're not using your platform the way it should be, and that platform should be taken away from you. Absolutely.
I've never been a fan of applying pressure to other people too much. Do you know what I mean? I'm not that kind of person as a human. I'm just not that person. Do you know what I mean? So it's really up to them how they want to go about it. I felt I wanted to, and I'm glad I did. Do you know what I mean? I'm glad we did. But I wouldn't speak for other people. Even fans that aren't white, and they'd be like, "Oh, Vukovi haven't said anything yet." And I started to think about that, and I was like, I would hate for anyone to think that's because we side on the non-movement side of stuff, which is completely not the case. Do you know what I mean? But for me, it's just so obvious that I'm not racist, and I just love everyone. It's just for me, that's obvious. But then I came to realize that that isn't obvious for other people that don't know us.
But I can imagine how some people would be like, okay, but I'm going to lose fans if I post that I'm defending that people shouldn't be killed because of their skin color. And it's like, well, do you really want those fans?
99.99% of the people I know and people that have been fans of our band are completely on the same level as what we're talking about here.
It seems we have like-minded people in our fan base too. Thank God. So we didn't have any negative response. Our followers didn't grow, and anyway, I didn't speak up to push our numbers. If some people decided to unfollow us because of that, well, good riddance.
You definitely, this is the classic shit, you definitely notice people unfollowing you and stuff like that, but fucking good riddance, that's fine, not a problem. It's almost like a clear out of people that you probably don't want that being interested in you anyway, and if you speaking out about that offends them enough that they can't follow your band anymore, then fuck them, absolutely fuck them.
Exactly. You don't care about people whose rights are being taken away and whose freedoms is taken away? Fuck you! I don't need an extra follower. If you're a piece of shit person, burn in hell.
Yeah.
If you're part of the alternative community and you're veering towards that, it's because you have different views from the majority of people, or you're more willing to learn about everything which is going on. And I think if you like a band, you like them for their music, and then you get to know them, about them and their lives. So I think it's really important that if they want to speak up about something, they're usually entitled to that.
I'll take it back as an example. Bands like The Jam, Clash, those kind of bands, very politically inspired by their songs. So it makes sense for those bands. But then you've got, on the complete flip side, you've got other bands I can't think of any at the moment. But, very much just dancey fun.
There's definitely bands where I love who are politic driven. So Anti-Flag, for example, all their songs are about social misjustices, issues, everything. They cover the whole spectrum. And I know that if I want a music like that, I'll go and listen to Anti-Flag. And then I know there's a lot of other bands who do talk about politics, but they don't kind of speak up on it as much. So their lyrics will be something politically driven, but they won't go too overboard to let people know about that. I think they want you to kind of listen to it and figure out for yourselves.
And same with Pally, like when they brought out Massacre, everyone was like, oh, some people were happy about it, but people who supported, guns were like, oh, we don't like, you shouldn't have done this, you've lost fans from it. And they were like, this is our opinion, if you don't like it, we don't like you. They're in this industry, and this industry is known for speaking out about what they believe in. So why would you be a fan in this community if you didn't like that?
There are still people that get enraged online and say stuff like, just do music and shut up. But screw them. I see art and political global issues going more and more hand in hand, and I believe if you have values and you're in a privileged position to speak up and try to make the world a better place, you should definitely contribute. There are different topics that are dear to me, and I really want to speak up about them to pass on the right message to those people who listen and look up to me.
I saw so many bands using it as much as they could. Like, for example, Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine has always been quite a political person. Obviously, Rage are the ultimate band for that. But he was pushing everything he could. I think he ended up writing a whole song for some of the charities with all the money going to it. But there was like a whole thing online because there was a couple of his fans tweeting back and saying like, oh, I didn't sign up for Rage Against the Machine to be a political band, and saying like, you need to stop this, stop going on about stuff, you need to just stick on the music and everything. And like, people were just looking like saying, is this guy serious? Like, Rage Against the Machine are the biggest political band ever. Like, how? I think Tom Morello even said like, can you please tell me what songs you thought weren't political so I can just like delete them? Because like, how are you consuming Rage Against the Machine? How are you listening to that band, those lyrics, and not like digesting it as problems that's happened in the past, or like things or issues, social issues? Like, to see that there's people saying they were fans of the band and had no idea about that kind of thing, for me, and I think a lot of people, was crazy. So it definitely brought a lot more attention to things like that, the meaning behind things. And then like, I feel like a lot of people have gone back and listened to those songs now, and then even if they didn't realize some of the issues, they've researched it, and they've done their part to educate themselves so they can be open to that conversation, and for future generations for it to be a normal thing we discuss. We had a lot of people messaging us going like, thank you, thank you, and we're glad you're addressing it and stuff, because our podcast, as I said again, is quite comical in a lot of ways. Though we do have really serious moments and stuff, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. But the fact that we could take kind of 5 minutes off and present it in a way, I think like that, I'm quite proud of. I feel like people listen to us to kind of have an escape anyway, or to take their minds off from stuff. But the fact that we could fit it into the conversation and not bombard you with those kind of issues is something I was quite happy with.
Most of the bands I follow and do really pay attention to were very big on promoting the movement. Like, there's a few that even did, merch where it was like all the proceeds go to Black Lives Matter, which I did also kind of indulge in a bit. So
at the end of the day, there's not a lot I can do, but ultimately, sure, we have a band, we can reach X amount of thousand people. So I was like, the least I can do, apart from shouting about signing petitions and whatnot, and reading up on your facts and history, is I can try and make a little bit of money for some of the movements. That's the least I felt I could do, so I did it. Do you know what I mean? I do all of our merch and stuff, and I manage all of that, so I was just like, it's the least I could do. So I knew that would absolutely make a bit of profit that I don't need right now. I'm okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is for something that it could go to use for. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've still got some of the t-shirts right in that box right there. I think we've only probably made about like £350, but we donated, like, we actually made quite a lot of money at the start of lockdown from like selling our merch. So I donated like £200 to kick it off.
I really like the whole concept of donating proceeds of streams, because selling shirts and asking fans for donations is very nice and shit, but some fans can't afford the merch but still want to help. And it takes a bit of more of a personal hit when you say, hey, instead of taking that money for me, I'm going to give it to organizations that need it. For example, not to toot their horn, but they're amazing, Charming Liars. Even though they're not really doing the whole BLM thing, all of the proceeds are going to the Beirut explosion, which I find great. But I just do think that maybe for some bands, the activism could be a little less performative and a little more actually doing something and not just going to the protests to post pictures, and that's all.
Also, Hot Milk releasing California's Burning. That was a very good sort of little bonus. Yeah, because I think it's about like how the world is kind of going to shit right now.
Like Pele putting out their new album, like they didn't really celebrate it or anything. They did. They said they didn't. They kind of did, but it was like they put out this new album and then all the things were like, we don't really care. Please like post about BLM. Like we don't really care about your album, which was really interesting.
Like that priority.
The band Paris, they've just put out their third record now, but they actually delayed it, the release twice because of everything going on with Black Lives Matter. And Lynn was very vocal about saying that, like, you know, for us, this is not the time for us to put out a new record and trying to get your attention with it. This time is about the voices that need to be heard, having a platform to talk about everything. It's interesting to see how bands like that are treating, have worked alongside the movement as well.
But there's a specific band that did a great live stream and they donate the proceeds, and there's another band who donate the proceeds from streams and the music video and the AdSense from that. And then there's another band who took it upon themselves to not do anything about the protests before they saw that it was a cool thing to do, and then dared criticize how people that have been oppressed for hundreds of years show their anger towards the government as people who are quite honestly very fucking privileged. Like, don't speak for African Americans, just amplify their voices.
Especially for the black actors, singers, public figures, I think they should open up to the situation and tell people what they've been through, how it made you feel.
So with the podcast, we both myself and Sean sat down for a bit and like had a proper discussion of like what we could do, like is like, you know, how can we you know, do our part basically with everything. And we talked a lot because we found it one of those awkward situations because we didn't want to take up and platforms or spaces that other people's voices who have a lot more to say could be heard and address more things that, you know, we're not even aware of. But we wanted to make people aware of everything and that they need to go and have a look at these things and stuff. So, you know, we had conversations as well. We put a couple of requests in to do an actual Black Lives Matters episode with a guest who could talk more in depth about it and some of their experiences and everything. And that was quite hard to organize. In the end, it didn't come up. But we made some donations ourselves. But it's still something we'd like to do it in the future. But it's such an important subject, so we had to do something. We unfortunately we couldn't do as much as we wanted, but we did get to do a little bit, so we're quite happy about that.
I went to, I think it was only one protest in the end in London, but I remember after was when there were these guys come up to me and they were like, to me and my friend, and they were asking us if we could have like a conversation so they could like educate us on like the Black Lives Matter movement, what it means to us, what we can do to help more. And I think that's really important.
What I've learned myself over the last 30 years is if someone has a problem with you because of your skin color, educate. Tell them about what you've been through. And 9 out of 10 times that person also really gets startled from it and is like, oh man, I really never knew it was this bad. And I think that's way more important than social media.
Showing your support.
We're all humans, and if you're white or black, it doesn't matter. If I tell you stories about what I've been through in the past, you will have tears in your eyes, and you will be like, your emotion as a human will connect you to that person, even if it's black or white. So I think at that moment you will feel so hurt by what happened in the past that you will never ever think about skin color again.
I knew that racism existed, but I come from a country like Serbia. We have no black people in Serbia. Like, the N-word is completely acceptable to say. We have no representation. So I moved to Munich, and then I started getting educated on the subject, but it was really going to the US and talking to the people who are like, listen, I give my kid a curfew so she can go back home and nothing will happen to her, not because of a rapist or whatever, but because of the fucking cops. And that was shocking.
As soon as you go on social media, and this is the point where I felt it really badly, was just seeing the amount of shit I saw online, just of people saying in the videos and stuff. Like, I legit felt legitimately like heartbroken, like watching it all. Like, honestly, like, it was just like, I think it's because, like, probably much like yourself, like, we're empathetic people, and I can't even remotely relate to how someone could have that amount of hate in them. I don't understand it. Do you know what I mean? So to see it being used on someone, especially someone in a position of power, of course, it's like, I just can't even comprehend it, and it makes me so angry and upset. Because
for me, cops were always just like, oh, if there's something wrong, I can run up to a cop and be like, hey, there's this guy following me, can you please help me? Or I got lost, help me. Like, that was the role of the cop in my mind. So seeing that perspective and seeing the tears in the eyes saying, like, yeah, if we see a cop, we're scared to die for no reason, that kind of bursted my little bubble. And ever since then, I've been trying to get educated as much as I can. I've been trying to use my white privilege where I can and just amplify black voices as much as I can.
We're both black, but I think our view on this subject is completely different, because Liana's from a very different environment. Liana's from an environment of money and safe and private schools and those kinds of things. And I basically grew up in the ghetto. So that's two different views and also two different experiences.
I spoke about it with some friends, and one of them told me about an extremely racist person she knows, and some of the things she said, and that just disgusted me so much that I couldn't stay silent anymore on socials as well. That type of a person is literally everywhere, and they need to be educated, sanctioned. They need to understand that one way or another, this is not right, and that's why speaking up is so important.
So I was seeing a lot of, when I was out chatting to like the old people, and they were like, oh, look at all these protests, like how awful is it? And a lot of them were being like, oh, now it's really changed my opinion, like I wasn't racist before, but I am now. Like, they shouldn't have been looting. And I was like, you were racist before, you're just now using this as an excuse.
With they tear down a lot of statues in this country, which people felt very strongly about certain statues anyway. And then you had the counter movement. A lot of people then went out just to protect statues, and then everything's escalating, and that's a problem in itself. So you've got a lot of people that turned away from the movement because of incidents like that.
In my opinion, it's so much more important to educate people rather than cancel them. Because if you say cancelled someone, they're stuck with that opinion which they got cancelled for. And they'll probably stick by that because, again, that's all they know, like Evie said. But if you're educating someone, then they can go on to educate other people who had the same mindset that they originally did.
My real, like, in-your-face racism only began here. While maybe you've had a real approach to it, as in also trying to change what the person standing in front of you was thinking and trying to have a conversation with him. Whereas my mom, for example, I have from the stories that I've heard, which I find quite interesting, is she would never tell you that she's been treated like in a racist way when she definitely has. And the moments that she then recalls, she really wipes away with like, yeah, but they don't know better, you know, almost feeling sorry for them, which is a completely different approach than us who have.
It's so ingrained in people's minds in some places that, like, I don't know how you change that. I wish I knew.
I remember speaking to someone, quite an older gentleman, originally from like the valleys here in Wales, so like not normally in a not near a city centre or anything like that, and he never realised that even half of these were a thing, and he kind of reevaluated how he was treating people of all backgrounds, of all genders, of all ethnicities. Like he was talking to a few people and just saying like, it made him aware of some discussions he never even thought about in the past.
I thought I was doing my part before, but like this time I was just like, hey, I'm actually really uninformed about this whole thing. And I'd like to know more because I would like to be doing my part. I would like to be, informed and able to inform others. So, you know, I picked up books and I listened to podcasts and I watched, there's like a whole bunch of documentaries on Netflix that you can watch like really easily. They're really interesting. And I don't know why I didn't do it before, but I also don't understand why people aren't doing it either.
Especially here in Wales, it was brought up to a lot of politicians here that not enough Black history was taught in schools in Wales, and the Black history happening in Wales and that kind of background. And the government have already said that they'll be pushing for more of that to be learned in schools as it goes on. So it's stuff like that might feel like the smallest bit of achievement or the smallest win, but it's definitely a win, and it's definitely something that's going to help future generations going forward.
I'm a black man, but slavery is behind us.
No, but
there's no one that can change that anymore.
For sure.
It happened and it's in the past. It was bad, okay. Still, a lot of those moments still built this planet. So I don't think that we should look back and be like, we need amends for what happened there. No, we don't. We want to change it in the now.
The younger generation is a lot more like, that's not okay. Like, sort yourself out. And a lot of that is sometimes that you see things that people are like getting on at people for, and you're like, it's not a big deal, like, leave it. But it has helped in some cases that people do something wrong and the younger generation really gets at them for it.
If I was out in a pub or something and seen like someone being like undeniably openly racist to someone, I would feel pretty bloody compelled to be like, what the fuck, what are you doing? Do you know what I mean? Regardless, but like obviously now it's like probably even more so, because beforehand when I was maybe a wee bit younger, it would have just been like, you probably would have just shrugged it off and been like, you know that's wrong, but let's just detach ourselves from the situation and we'll go somewhere else. But now I actually think more people would feel, as I'm saying, feel confident to call it out. Like
checks, police just stops you and is like, yeah, can we check your bag? Okay, whatever. Airports. I always get picked out of the line in airports. It's those small little things, and that's why I don't want to. I don't want to be black and white. But that's the problem with a lot of white people is we don't call you racist, but we want you to acknowledge what's happening. Those things, those little things. That's what Black Lives Matter wants you to see.
Black Lives Matter as much as anyone else's lies across whether you're, short, tall, rich, poor, white, black, Asian, whatever, that's the idea behind it.
I don't care what you look like. You're just to me, you're just another human being, and I'm not going to think about where you're from or what you're... If I even ask where you're from, it's only because I like you or I'm interested in you. It's nothing to do with, like... Do you know what I mean? It's like... Nothing that people like to interact and ask people questions about their background and where they're from, but apart from that, it's like, I don't give a fuck, like, what you look like. I don't care. Like, we're just human beings. Like...
That's my whole point. We're all the same. Just like Barbie. White Barbie is the same as black Barbie. right? So, and you don't see that, and I really respect that. But you should be surprised how many people don't.
Tolerance has definitely changed. Do you know what I mean? Like, things that people would have accepted before now will not be accepted anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, in terms of police brutality, racism in public, no way. Things will be called out much more often now.
And we'll really see the effects in, a year's, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years time. I think now is the catalyst for everyone to do their part. I mean, there's no excuses anymore. We know what's going on. We know that some aspects of the media don't show all these things, that you need to take everything with a pinch of salt, and you need to look into the finer details of everything, really.
Other than posting on social media, this movement gave me the opportunity to think and open my eyes on the matter. I always surround myself with like-minded people, and this sometimes makes me forget that out there, racism, homophobia, and all these shitty things are unfortunately still a thing. I shouldn't even be surprised, but seriously, are we still in the 1930s or what? What happened just reminded me that there's still a lot of work to do, and that's why I wanted to speak up.
Come on, it's not the fucking 1950s. You're posting a story. You don't even have to leave your fucking bed. Like, let's not pretend like it's hard to support the movement.
I think people are now trying to prove that they're not racist just because they think being a racist is bad. It is bad, but they only try to prove the other side. No, I think it's very important to look inside yourself. And even I did that as a black male. Even I looked into myself and I checked, where are my racist points? And I definitely found some. And how do I change that? I think it's better to just look into yourself and change what you know is wrong.
Especially people who maybe like in their 20s and their 30s have realized, and then when they have kids, they'll be able to pass on that knowledge of kind of not treating people, no, we shouldn't treat anyone differently. We're all the same, and that, things like this aren't okay. You need to do your bit. You need to help everything. I think it's definitely something I think we'll be talking for generations to come. It'll be used as an example how we can all educate ourselves and better ourselves in schools, online, everything, as everything goes forward.
It will be interesting to see how it translates across to post-pandemic, shall we say, which I think it's going to die down.
It's rise and falling of trends. That is social media. Regardless of how important the topic being spoke about is, social media doesn't care. Like, it doesn't give a fuck. It's just about trends. That's it. And that's the toxic part of social media.
Everybody's posting black squares without even knowing what it means. And then when it's not trendy anymore to have it in your bio or spread donation links or anything like that, it goes away. And then the second another murder happens, it comes back.
The most important thing is just keeping yourself informed and making sure that the people around you are also aware of what's going on, and hoping that they spread the word too.
The only way it's going to change is everybody standing up to this problem.
And I think that's something nice to end it off with as well, is actually the best thing you can do. Really, the most effective way of, diminishing racism completely is educate your children. That's the most important thing you can do.
I think the most beautiful thing is my son and me. You see me as a black male, but my son is blonde and white and blue eyes.
Yeah.
And he doesn't see color. He sees his father.
Yeah.
It just doesn't matter. And I also don't see color. He's my son. And I think we're a perfect example of how the world should be.